Right now on the National Weather Desk, summer sizzle. A dangerous heat wave moves east, broiling some of the largest cities in America.
Is where we're seeing our feels like values of those heat indices surpassing 100 degrees.
While the Republican National Convention gets underway with the threat of severe weather in Milwaukee, also why a Texas city is increasing water restrictions.
A drenching from Hurricane Beryl would have helped Hutto's conservation efforts.
You'll find out how we can have rainbows on sunny days.
This is what's called a circumhorizontal arc.
A new health concern that ticks are spreading.
It can cause death of that tissue right there.
And the state that says it has some of the sweetest watermelons in the world.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Angela Brown. The heat is on as we begin this week. More than 130 million Americans are under heat alerts today, while the West Coast is getting a break. The eastern half of the country is broiling. Meteorologist Christina Ernie has more.
Good morning. From the plains in the Midwest to all along the East Coast, temperatures are surging today well into the 90s. Some record-breaking warmth on the way too this week, with some temperatures heading up near 100 degrees. We have heat alerts across a good chunk of the country, but especially along the eastern seaboard is where we're seeing our feels like values of those heat indices surpassing 100 degrees, especially by Cape Hatteras and into the Carolinas and Virginia, feeling like 105 to, in some areas, feeling like 112 throughout the day today, and up towards the Washington, D.C. metro area into portions of Pennsylvania, feeling like 101 to 109. And this continues to climb. Heat indices surge on Tuesday, too, feeling well over 100 degrees along the East Coast as temperatures build. I'm meteorologist Christina Ernie for the National Weather Desk.
The high in Las Vegas yesterday was only 109 degrees, breaking a 7-day record at 115 degrees or higher. Vegas saw its hottest temperature on July 7th at 120 degrees. At least 37 people have died in just July from excessive heat. Many places, though, it's not just the heat, it's also humidity. Alex Cordero explains the role the dew point plays in this oppressive weather.
The dew point is a temperature that measures the amount of moisture in the atmosphere, all right? And the higher this number, the more uncomfortable it is to you and I, because the more humid it is, that means it's harder for sweat to evaporate off our skin, and that's how the body cools itself. So the higher the dew point, the more muggy or miserable it may be. Anything above 70 is usually quite uncomfortable for the human body.
And unfortunately for Vegas and much of the West as well, the heat isn't going anywhere. The temperature outlook for next week shows above average readings across the region. South Florida and the Northeast will also likely see above average temperatures as well. But check out the nation's midsection, where average and below average temperatures are expected to be below there. There's also a threat of severe weather. The greatest risks are in the Northeast, western Nebraska, and then a good portion of the Midwest, including Chicago. Thunderstorms and damaging winds are the greatest risk this afternoon and into the evening. And there's a slight risk of those storms in Milwaukee later today. That's where the Republican National Convention kicks off this afternoon at the Fisher Forum, where the Bucks play. Milwaukee is looking at more days of intense heat with highs near 90 degrees. Temperatures will start to cool down, though, tomorrow, so they can look forward to that. When it comes to severe weather, there are specific criteria that have to be met for a severe thunderstorm warning to be issued. Meteorologist Mike Susko has details.
Not all thunderstorms are severe, but when they hit certain thresholds, then they become classified as that. And that is one of the three following. Either A, you need wind gusts that are 58 miles per hour or greater. Hail to be produced at the size of a quarter or larger, that's 1 inch in diameter or larger. And if a thunderstorm produces a tornado, then it's going to be considered severe no matter what. And you only need 1 out of the 3 in order to be considered severe. You do not need wind gusts to be associated with the hail and tornado or vice versa. It just needs to hit one of these 3 criteria for a thunderstorm to be considered severe. Take note, does not include heavy rain and does not include frequent lightning, although both are often associated with severe thunderstorms. If it's severe or not, if you hear thunder or see lightning, make sure you take shelter inside a sturdy building.
And last week, a city in Texas moved into stage 2 water restrictions. The goal is to start conserving more water, at least until Mother Nature sends more their way. Betty Cross has the details from the Austin suburbs.
Hutto's stage 2 water restrictions limit outdoor watering and washing to twice a week on designated days. That water use must be done between 8 at night and 10 in the morning.
We reached a triggering event, which I believe in our particular case is 75 to 80% of our production. So whenever we reach that, then we start stage 2.
Hutto's water use has gone up along with the city's aggressive growth. It is one of Austin's fastest growing suburbs and one of the fastest growing cities in the nation. To keep up with new construction, Hutto formed 2 additional water partnerships.
Recharge Water is supposed to be delivering an additional 3-4 million gallons of water per day to us by 2026.
In the meantime, a drenching from Hurricane Beryl would have helped Hutto's conservation efforts, but the rain detoured around Austin and central Texas.
We saw some cloudy skies and some breezy air, but other than that, I mean, we didn't really see much here in Hutto at all from Beryl.
Despite the new water restrictions, City Hall and Hutto school buildings are likely to have the greenest grass because they use private well water and don't draw from the community's supply. That's not the case in the Cross Creek subdivision, where no rain and scorching temperatures mean conservation is the only way to prevent a bump to even harsher restrictions.
Well, since April, Iowa has been hit with devastating tornadoes and record flooding. The destruction covers nearly 2/3 of the 99 counties in Iowa, impacting an estimated 5,000 homes. Tyler Talal looks at the steps the state is now taking to speed up recovery efforts.
Right now, there's at least $130 million in damages to public infrastructure, including roads, bridges, and water treatment plants across the state.
This will be a long-term recovery, and it's going to require many resources to help families rebuild, businesses reopen, and communities to come back stronger than before.
State leaders traveling to disaster sites, finding the most urgent need is housing, leading to several new state programs helping survivors find temporary and permanent places to live.
Many homeowners and renters, they didn't have flood insurance because their home was not located in a floodplain.
10 million American Rescue Plan dollars will go to housing developers building new homes in impacted counties. There's more than $6 million in loans to help Iowans rebuild, and the state's trying a new program normally used by states impacted by hurricanes to offer temporary housing. Another new program will help farmers using USDA loans manage their interest rates. And while multiple Northwest Iowa schools deal with flooding damage, state education leaders are working on solutions to start the school year on time, but they aren't ruling out a late start.
Last week, Arkansas also broke tornado records thanks to Hurricane Beryl. Meteorologist James Bryant has those details.
Monday, July 8th, Tropical Storm Beryl moved through Arkansas, and it brought with it some tornadoes. We saw numerous tornado warnings during the afternoon and evening from southwest into central Arkansas, and now we know that 9 tornadoes have been confirmed. The survey results are in. There were several across southwest Arkansas, east of Texarkana, and down just west of El Dorado, 1 on the Ouachita-Nevada County line. Then there were 2 tornadoes near Sparkman, and then another 2 in Jefferson County. 7 of these tornadoes were rated EF1. There were 2 that were rated EF0. But most importantly, we broke some records. Not only was this the largest July tornado outbreak on record, but this broke the record in one afternoon for the most tornadoes in July. The previous record was 8 tornadoes set in July 2009. Tornadoes in July in Arkansas are extremely rare, but one tropical system, and that's Tropical Storm Beryl, on July 8th, broke that record.
Now let's check to see the weather in cities across the country today. And we start in Buffalo, New York, along the shores of Lake Erie. And as we mentioned earlier, there is a risk of severe storms later today, along with 1 to 2 inches of rain. The high will be just 79 degrees. The opposite of Buffalo today is really Phoenix, Arizona. While it will be partly cloudy, it will be very hot. The high should approach 110 degrees. And get this, the extended forecast shows the high will be 110 or even higher for the next 2 weeks. And now to Seattle in the Pacific Northwest, it will be partly cloudy and also dry and no excessive heat. The heat should reach, the high should reach actually 80 degrees, and the dry weather means fire dangers across the state is also high. And finally, we head to Atlanta, Georgia. Right there, there's a chance of afternoon storms in the southeast. The mercury in Atlanta should hit around the mid-90s there. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, we'll share tips for staying safe if you get stuck driving in rainy weather. And it's watermelon harvest season in Oklahoma. We'll check in on this year's crops.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Well, we normally think of rainbows appearing after it rains, the reason we call it rainbows, but rainbows can also appear on sunny days. Meteorologist Marshall McPeak explains how it happens.
A lot of folks sent in some pictures. There was this one from Ada in Union County near Marysville, and you can see the bright rainbow in the clouds. Now, there were no storms, there was no rain, just some high, wispy clouds and some sunshine. So where did the rainbow come from? Well, this is what's called a circumhorizontal arc. How's that for a new vocabulary word, right? This is what happens anytime we have the right kind of clouds, the sun at the right angle, and a nice clear view of the sky. So those high, wispy cirrus clouds are made up mostly of ice crystals. And in some cases, the water droplets in the ice crystals can be super cooled. They can even be 20 below 0 Celsius or even colder. So as the sunlight comes through the atmosphere, it hits those ice crystals and the light gets refracted, just like in a prism. And that's when it forms the rainbow in the clouds. Now that spectrum almost always shows red on the top and the violet on the bottom in a circumhorizontal arc. It tends to be a little more distinct than just cloud iridescence, which has more of a mother of pearl look to it. It's all kind of mixed together. So the process is very similar to when we see sundogs on either side of the sun at sunrise or sunset. So it's a beautiful way to see a rainbow and not have to deal with the rain or the storms to get it.
And speaking of storms, when it's raining outside, it's important to stay alert, especially if you're driving during a downpour. Meteorologist Grant Carlton explains why.
Severe weather can happen any time of the year, but for most of the U.S., we have two peak severe seasons. The first primary season heading into the spring, that second peak heading into the fall. That's, of course, when the jet stream's a bit more active, air masses are clashing together. Through the summertime, that's also why we can get slow-moving storms through the summer. So it's important to remember a few safety tips if you get caught driving in one of these downpours. It can take twice the distance to stop on wet road compared to dry road, despite today's technology. So that's also why it's important to slow down, increase your reaction time so that you can also keep an eye out for any standing water potentially on the road. If you do get caught hydroplaning, stay calm. Don't brake. You want to take that foot off the gas slowly and let that traction regain itself. To prevent hydroplaning, you also want to inspect your tires. You can do the penny test to check your treads. And it's also important to check the forecast to see if any of those slow-moving storms are in your forecast.
Weather doesn't just play a role on the roads, but it's also critical when flying. Pilots need to know a great deal about what they will encounter in the skies because different types of weather can impact planes differently. Meteorologist Kyle Alexander has more.
At any given moment, more than 5,000 planes navigate the sky across the United States. When it comes to flying, one factor that's always going to play an important role is the weather. Turbulence, fog, rapid change in wind speed, freezing levels, and thunderstorms are just a few of the factors that impact aviation. Mountain Empire Airport Manager Brian Burkett says that turbulence, thunderstorms are some of the biggest contributing factors.
It's just like riding on a bumpy road. Now, some severe turbulence could potentially damage the aircraft structurally, which could lead to a catastrophe. But most of the time it's pretty light. These airplanes can withstand very high winds and pretty serious turbulence.
Pop-up thunderstorms also pose a serious risk to flights.
Flights can be diverted, delayed, even canceled.
Johnson County, Tennessee Airport Manager Dave Garris tells us the weather can influence a pilot's perception.
When clouds and weather gets in the way, you can lose your sense of what way is up and what way is down.
Having up-to-date and accurate weather information optimizes flight planning for pilots and airlines. Reporting in Smith County, Virginia, I'm meteorologist Kit Alexander.
Ticks and the diseases they can cause are a part of life in the South in the summertime, but recently some new bug-borne bacterial infections have emerged. Mike Owen has more.
Ticks and the diseases they can cause are a part of life in the South in summertime, but recently some new bacterial infections have emerged.
Our state, we normally think about Lyme disease or Rocky Mountain spotted fever, but there's these two new cases of new bacterial infections that are kind of coming in that we want to closely monitor.
Dr. Nolan says last year they discovered the first potential case of an unusual tick or chigger-borne disease just outside of Myrtle Beach. So this summer, They're planning on spending more time in our area to better understand these diseases and educate others.
These are very easily treated by antibiotics. The challenge, though, is that because most doctors aren't thinking about them, you might get delayed in diagnosis. And so that's really the concern.
One is called Rickettsia Parker's eye and is brought on by one of the 9 types of ticks in South Carolina, the Gulf Coast tick. The other disease is called scrub typhus and is brought on by a chigger bite. But while both are different bacterial infections, they have a similar warning sign.
Characteristic about them is something called an eschar. And so an eschar is where the tick or the chigger bites your skin. It can cause death of that tissue right there. So imagine, if you will, it almost looks like if you took a cigarette to your skin and you got a cigarette burn, you get this black kind of center where that tissue is actually dying.
And they all cause fever, headache, body aches, and some of them can become quite chronic.
Watermelon harvest has arrived in Oklahoma. Farmers in the small town of Rush Springs, just outside of Oklahoma City, say the soil is fertile territory for growing some of the sweetest watermelons. Katie Arata went to find out what makes these melons just so marvelous.
You may be asking yourself, what's the secret to growing a good watermelon here in Oklahoma?
Sandy soil in Rush Springs.
People come from all over the world to get their hands on a juicy Rush Springs watermelon.
Our original fruit stand, before it burnt down, we had a signature wall back on that back wall, and they would sign their name and date it and put where they're from. We had people from all over, like different cities, states, even different countries that would come and visit us. So it was really cool.
But what makes these melons better than the ones you could buy at the store?
The store, they pick them green, so they'll hold in the stores. Here we pick them, we let them sit on the vine and get them just as ripe as we can possibly get them before they come to shelves.
Mike Miller has been working on the family farm since he was 4 years old. This week, the Miller family began their summer harvest, growing a variety of different watermelons.
So we have our big 720s. They're big, just a seeded Jubilee melon. We have our famous black diamonds. Then we have red seedless, orange seedless. We also have yellows. We have orange as well.
When it comes to picking the sweetest, juiciest watermelon,
I think I found one.
Miller says it's all about the sound the melon makes when you knock on it.
You want a good hollow sound on a watermelon. Like this one right here, it's green. This one right here, it's ready to go.
And time now for a short break, but first we soar over the Conemaugh River running through Cambria Peninsula.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
During summer months, moths and butterflies can be found all across the country. Meteorologist Dave Dirks has details on one of them, the Luna moth.
A trip to the high country of Johnson County, Tennessee this time of year will showcase some incredible views, Mother Nature's air conditioning, and maybe even you'll come across a Luna moth, like Dottie Phipps did in her apple tree earlier this week. Now, the word Luna is Latin for moon, and this biggins is found only in North America and is North America's largest moth. It's easily recognized by its lime green color with a wingspan ranging from a little more than 4 inches to as large as 7.5 inches. Now, the Luna moth doesn't have a mouth or a digestive system. It only lives about a week after leaving its cocoon. Its eye spots on each wing are thought to confuse or frighten potential predators.
And we'd love to share your weather content on the air. You can find us on all your favorite social media platforms, including Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. Just search the National Weather Desk. We'll be right back.